Hello, everybody. John Feigenbaum from CDN Publishing. It's Thanksgiving week, and we've got a lot to talk about. Today, Patrick Perez is here to chat with us about all the things that we've been doing over at CDN for the last year. I can't believe it's already November. So, Patrick, what's on your mind?
Yeah, great to be here, John, with you. Haven't done one of these in a long time, as we discussed, like you say, yeah, I obviously cannot believe it's been a year already. I feel like I'm just getting ready to go to the 2022 Fun Show, to be honest.
Right.
A great year for Greysheet. We've done our first international show in a couple of years. We went to Europe twice this year, which I think was fantastic. But for Greysheet in general, I think we've made major strides in a lot of areas. We've added tons of additional U.S. pricing. It's like for U.S. pricing is kind of amazing to me because right when you think it's all done, we realize, oh, there's this giant section of pricing that we've never touched before. For example, the Overton varieties for cat bus halves, which you did an amazing job of, filling in just an insane amount of pricing there. I think we've had really awesome growth with CDN Exchange. Many more members, more interaction, more data, more transactions, just a greater awareness of how powerful that platform is. And of course, we have some really amazing plans for it in the coming year with a redesign and kind of a reboot to make it even more powerful for numismatic professionals. And then just the publications themselves, which we'll get into a little bit more later with the addition of some new grading services and even more pricing to add for US. And then of course the world, which I just mentioned. We have the banknote book, which we've been constantly expanding. It's now fully digitized, as kind of has been known, but our outreach abroad for that specific purpose to make the international community of dealers and auction houses, importantly, now every auction house in Europe that sells paper money is fully aware of what the banknote book is and our dedication to it. We've been putting a lot of resources into it. And I think that momentum is just going to continue to build, provided that we continue to do a good job communicating, all the effort that we're putting into it. So that's kind of my brief recap, but to me, it's more looking toward the future. Me personally, I'm not great at looking behind. I kind of just, whatever happened yesterday, I don't even really remember. It's just what's going on tomorrow. And I think our company is a little bit that way too. We appreciate what we've done, but we're always looking to do more, and we don't rest on our laurels for sure.
I agree, and I think I think it's a great setup. And while you were just talking about that, it's the perfect time to hear you say all those things we've been working on, to acknowledge the fact that we're a really small team. We're about 8-10 people total, and just amazing. We pack. I think we just punched so much above our weight in terms of what we achieve here, and just like you said, I mean, I have no interest in what we did last year. I'm all in on what we're doing for next year, which, like you said, is a whole new redesign for CDN Exchange. We have to talk about redoing pricing structures because we have new grading services coming into the industry. We have new product categories that we want to cover. We are getting calls from companies we've never gotten calls from, large ones that want us to provide data, because we're really the only, we're not just only, but we are the premier pricing provider in numismatics in the United States. And like you said, we've been going to Europe, and in Europe, we're proving to them that who we are, because largely before the banknote book, we were unknown in Europe. So it's been fun, and I love it. I love every minute of it, and I can't thank you enough for the job you do. And it's great. It's a great group of people we have here. So I'm looking forward to 2023, even though this year went by in a blip.
Yeah, and I anticipate next year will go by equally as fast. So the first thing that I think we should jump into, and it's something that, and the reason I think we should jump into it first is because it's something that we've actually been grappling with for 7 years, literally, is pricing plus coins. And that kind of ties in with this discussion of the new CAC grading service, and then and even now a new grading scale, which will follow this current discussion. So just expand your own I know you've had a lot of discussions about it, and we all have, have our own thoughts about it. Do you just want to touch on that really briefly?
Sure. I mean, we have resisted, as our, loyal readers will know, resisted the idea of plus pricing on coins, because I always thought that, you know, if you want to know what a plus is worth, you just have to look at what a coin is worth and what the next grade is worth, and then decide what you want to pay into the spread for that. I mean, how many prices can we offer? Our prices, we've always said, are guidance. They're not. Nothing should be considered set in stone or the absolute. So, it's always subject to interpretation. So therefore, a plus should be. But we get, the most requested item for us is plus coins pricing, which, okay, fine, we'll add that. It's actually not that complicated, but it's a structural change for how we store data and how we display data. So that's part of the issue. And at the same time, we've got these new grading service of CAC. We've got NGC expanding into actually two different areas of grading. They're coming into something called Green Label, which is sort of a subset of NGC coins that have been pre-approved for eye appeal and things like that. And so we have to look at that as a new grading service. We'll trade differently than non-green label. And then also, we got an email yesterday announcing NGCX, which is a 10-point grading scale for coins, which is their answer to the idea of ball card grading, and trying to, I think, reach across the aisle, as it were, in collectibles and say, if you like sports cards and things like that, maybe in comics, then you'll understand the grading scale, which to a non-numismatist, of course, the 0 through 70 scale doesn't make a lot of sense. And it actually doesn't make a lot of sense if we had an academic conversation about it. Historically, we have 0 to 70, but not for a good, no, not for a good logical reason.
Yeah, exactly. The 70 scale is kind of a legacy thing that, yeah, it really fundamentally doesn't make any sense. One thing that's interesting is that I think about a lot is whether it's plus pricing or pricing newly graded CAC coins, is how much time do we let pass for these coins to trade and gather sales data before you can even put a price on it.
Good point.
That's something that I've been thinking about a lot, is that maybe you have to wait a year before these coins can get out into the wild and start trading, because otherwise pricing is largely speculative, which is something that we avoid at all costs.
Right. I mean,
Uh,
we want to see bidders. We want to see two-way market activity. We just want to represent the values here, accurately, so that, our whole goal. I don't know if people realize how fundamentally, the mission sort of statement is in my head, but the fundamental issue is protecting, buyers and sellers. That's our whole mission, is to put up a number that will protect you, so that when you buy, you're in the right place, and when you sell, the same thing. You don't sell for too little, or you don't try to get too much and then are unsuccessful. But right, without data, and that's good, because I think it'll serve our purposes as well. That we need a few 6 months or so to catch up to. A lot of companies like this make announcements. They want to make surprise announcements. They don't want to give away too much information. So it's, we aren't. It's not like we're ready to launch this the minute they announce it.
right. But I do applaud NGC for trying something new. And I think the 10-point grading scale does make a lot of sense to the average collector. Even someone who maybe doesn't even have any prior experience collecting sports, non-sports cards, or comics, just a brand new collector, so to speak. And as we know, for many, many years, a lot of numismatists or collectors start with bullion or buying moderns
Right.
and then move into classic. And so them creating a very simple to understand 10-point scale, although I think personally they overcomplicated certain parts of it. However, um, it's good. What I'm curious about is if we stay on the 70-point scale for classics and a guy starts collecting coins on the 10-point scale, how does he make that? How does he cross that bridge and kind of make that in his mind, like, oh gosh, like a 55 is a 8.8. Like, it's going to be interesting to see how these
Oh, I know.
equivalents work out over the next 5 years or so.
Right, and maybe it's the other way. Maybe the guys who are, collecting the moderns, then decide, oh, I love, moderns are cool, but I love classics. That's normally how it progresses in the collecting world.
Right.
And so if the entry point is gold eagles, and then they move over to $20 gold pieces. But I think more, we'll talk about it. And in fact, we heard earlier today from Andrew Salzberg, who's the president at NGC, that he's going to join us for the next conversation. So I'm actually really excited because I know about as much about this whole new thing as anybody else. So I can't wait to hear what he tells us about it, and we can ask him those kinds of questions. But, but I do think, the early feedback that I've seen on forums and things like that is it's actually better received than I thought. A lot of times there's, everyone's got a conspiracy theory about changing the grading scale and this and that. But generally, it seems like people are kind of getting it, and even the folks at NGC said this is very experimental. We're trying to be edgy here and cutting edge, and I applaud them for that. I mean, if I were, owned NGC, I probably would have tried this too. I mean, absolutely, I'd be trying everything that's
And
credible.
and one thing that I thought of too, when I heard about it is, we all know that there's a pretty big dearth of numismatic talent right now in the world, and I think it's easier to train a grader to grade modern coins on a 10-point scale than a 70-point scale.
Right.
So if you have a guy who's kind of a new grader and is, as a new hire, I think that might be a factor too. Is that it's easy? I think it's easier to teach someone that than the 70-point scale on moderns because like,
Right.
okay, well, if it has one spot, it's a 69, and if it has two spots, it's a 68, or whatever the standard is.
And I sure hope they don't put pluses on them.
Yeah, that would
9.9 plus.
that would be
Don't get me started. I mean,
yeah,
we avoided
that's
that
a
part before.
yeah,
Which
nightmare
is the
situation.
origin of the whole plus system, which is that make a decision, right? It's AU58 or it's MS60. Why do you need a plus? Really, you need more levels in there? Forget it. I won't go there.
Right, right, exactly. Um, so there's obviously a lot going on in U.S. coins, but as we mentioned, there's equally or more going on and more need for world items.
Right.
And so I just wanted to kind of jump in and give a little bit of updates on Banknote Book that I mentioned earlier. So for those that may not know, Banknote Book is the catalog for world paper money. For 45 years now, there's been this thing called PIC, the Standard Catalog of World Paper Money, which is no longer being published. And so the banknote book is if you're a world paper money collector or dealer, it's the catalog that you need, not only for information purposes but also for pricing. Now there's a lot of work to be done for pricing, but the question that we receive most often is when is the world going to be complete, right? So we don't have the banknote book is not a complete catalog yet because there are certain countries that are yet to be published. While every country has been started, some of them substantially still up to 80-90% completion, they have not been published. So we're hoping, this year for the viewers out there that we're going to have the world finished up to 98% by this time next year. I think that's something really important to convey. And and also it's also important to point out that in the meantime we're always updating. Anytime a new note comes out, anytime a new date, anytime a new signature variety comes out, it is in the catalog that week. And dedicated users of the banknote book know that, but I think not enough, average users are aware of that concept. And we have
Right.
things going on in cataloging and in auctions. And on, for instance, eBay is a really good where people are kind of making up their own pick numbers. That is entirely unnecessary because banknote book has already assigned a catalog number for that note. And so we're really pushing to have the world community kind of adopt that our numbering system.
And I think we're winning that battle, but you're right. I mean, there's all kinds of rogue entries being made an old catalog that should be thrown away, and part of that is just us getting the word out. And while you and Owen are the rubber hitting the road, adding entries to the catalog every day and changing pricing, we're working over here. I'm working on the technology side to automate this system. We're gonna do something completely revolutionary in the numismatic trade, which is that the publication itself, which is digital access on our website with subscribers, will be updated automatically as prices or descriptions change or entries are made. It's going to be just so phenomenal that this is going to be, 21st century publishing at its finest in terms of collectibles. And we're just really excited, and it opens up the door to other categories like world coins, which is of extreme interest to us. And we're working with some folks on that, and we'll have hopefully some big announcements. But I think starting in January at the latest, you're going to start seeing more and more world coins coming on our website, certainly by catalog reference. not necessarily with pricing in the beginning, but if you've been paying attention, we've got Canadian coins all over the place, and when we've been doing pricing on Canadian and U.S. Philippines, which is really not a world item, but it really is. I Patrick and I are just finishing some touches on updating all the U.S. Philippine coinage, and we love this kind of thing. I mean, I don't know if the viewers here can appreciate how much we love more going into new areas, as well as maintaining the data and pricing on the things we always do, like U.S. coins. And you know, by the way, I'll just add as an aside, I was working on Peace dollars this morning. Peace and Morgan dollars are starting to see a little bit of a dip in the last year. We saw nothing but plus signs. I mean, Morgan and Peace dollars almost doubled in the last 18 months, and now we're starting to see a small settling down in that area. Natural. Nobody should get excited, but I'd also pay attention to the levels on Morgan and Peace dollars at the moment.
Yeah, and I'm glad just what you brought up as far as the technology, because people really need to start viewing the bank notebook, the even the monthly gray sheet, CPG as living documents, things that are constantly. It's an organism. It changes. It's going to change. You know, every single day almost. Once we get the thing fully automated, the generation of the online publications, and I think that's really going. And obviously, we have not fully announced it yet because we're still working on it. But it's going to be something that um, users are going to want to be keenly aware of, so that they're always up to date with the most fresh
Right.
information.
Right. Everyone wants to know why we don't have a printed copy of the banknote book. Well, if you know anything about those old phone book size world catalogs of coins or paper, not only they're just, you know, everything about them is wrong in terms of being out of date or everything else, but it's also, in this age of eco-friendly and things like that. I mean, it's a disaster to print all these extra books that no one really needs. So we're really pushing, we're at the forefront of also this technology of get an iPad, for goodness sake, buy an iPad, access our documents on the iPad. It's so easy. You can carry 40 books in your iPad now in terms, with our subscriptions. And that's the way we're going. That's the other futuristic vision we have here, which is to bring more and more publications digitally. You can, hold them in your pocket on your phone or your iPad. And so you'll get to the show and already you can access the Friedberg book. Spink is working with us and they brought their British decimal catalog, and we're asking them to do some more with us. Everybody is really interested in the kinds of ideas we have here, and it may take a few more years to catch on fully, but it's definitely getting positive response.
Absolutely. So you briefly touched on some pricing updates, and I think that's a great segue just to kind of talk about just the market in general. Obviously, U.S. coins have enjoyed a really strong run the past 24 plus months, um, and we've all kind of seen a little bit of cooling of demand. But what's interesting is these shows the past, let's say since summertime, the last 2 quarters of this year so far, everything that I've heard is that the wholesale trading is still pretty strong. Dealers are more than happy to buy, whether for stock or for want list customers and stuff like that. So I think it's interesting. What do you see market wise for 2023 for US coins? If you had to just kind of throw out a couple things.
Well, I would never, I would never be so bold as to forecast beyond a few months in the coin business because I think it should never really be done.
Right.
But I can tell you that right, just like you said, in Baltimore last month, we were in Baltimore, and was it a few weeks ago that every dealer had a smile on their face. Again, that's a pretty big indicator in the coin business. Bunch of angry people at coin shows usually. Everybody was walking around with a big smile, and everything was selling. But what people were telling me was that price levels are important, more important than they were. You can't just throw any number on something, but if you were priced right, it was selling, and there's still not enough inventory out there. But like I said with Morgans, I mean, maybe the certain programs have dried up a little bit where everybody we're buying all these Morgans or something at a higher level, but it's not natural for things to only go up. We saw that with technology stocks. We know that the longer they go up, the more precarious they become. So with coins, I think we've seen a much smaller dip than we did in other collectibles that were, like sports cards have seen some big adjustments. Coins are a more stable business, and what's happened that I'm hearing is some of the big sports card vendor sellers and marketplaces are reaching out to us and saying, this is a good business, this numismatics thing. These coins and paper money, you know, this is a real thing. These have been around a long time, and there have been coin collectors for hundreds and hundreds of years, and especially in Europe and so on. So I think our day is coming, and that's what's solidifying the downside right now. So instead of everybody saying, "Oh, all the profits that we made on coins in the last 18 months, I'm just going to sell my collection," people are really seeing that places like eBay and other marketplaces are actually seeing greater demand because there's more exposure. I mean, this is exactly why, NGC is coming out with a new label, new grading label standard, because they're going the other way. They're going to these other collections saying, you know, if you don't, you have the stomach for cards, you're going to love coins. We don't have that kind of roller coaster, market. And so I think we could be finally seeing our day in that regard. And then that would worry me, in only the sense that there's not enough coins of classic
Right.
U.S. coins. There are not enough to get this much more demand. If 3 cent nickels, if 1,000 people came in and started buying 3 cent nickels that didn't, a $300 coin would become a $3,000 coin overnight. There's no coin. There are no coins. They're just not expensive, and they're great.
Right.
They're so cool. So, this is the same with U.S. paper money. We've already seen that. You can talk to paper money better than I can, but I know there's no inventory. If you want to buy, $5 Chiefs or Black Eagle silver certificates, right? Can you find them in nice high
Yeah,
grade?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, not in quantity. But it is funny that what you said just before is because for a long time everyone's like, oh, coins are that's old news. It's all about these newer collectibles, and now because of the wide base, so to speak, of and the history of coin collecting and its long term kind of benefit, you're seeing much more stability in our market. As I follow comics pretty closely, and a lot of what they call key books in high grade are pretty much are off across the boards anywhere from 40 to 60%. I mean, that's like,
Wow.
big cuts. And there's always a floor. And the good thing is that floor is still higher than the previous low. So there's always, things are stair stepping and they're higher, but from the peaks, no problem, 40%. So, and that's significant. And so and you get swings in coins, but usually not that big unless something crazy happens in in precious metals.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, so I totally agree with what you said. And yeah, with paper, yeah, we've seen some wild prices just because a lot of this stuff just simply doesn't exist. Um, for me, what I'm kind of interested to follow going into calendar year 2023 is if the collectibles business and specifically rare coins, but how insulated are we from these outside pressures? That'll be interesting to follow, and that's really more on the high end, of course. Expensive coins, but it'll be interesting to follow.
Sure, sure. I mean, we know that some of the biggest buyers in the last 2 years in U.S. coins, people buying the 7-figure coins, um, were doing that with money they earned in other markets, like digital currencies and things like that. But they were actually quite smart to hedge themselves, and that's what they were doing. They were buying
Right,
$1 million coins with currency they made elsewhere. Maybe it was real estate, maybe it was Bitcoin or whatever. And I think they can be happy they did. And we'll never know. The coin business has always been strange in that it never behaves properly. Right? We could have a complete market downturn, but then you know 2 or 3 people with very deep pockets are just can diversify into coins, and so then things don't get cheaper. Or the opposite has happened. We've seen brief periods of time when 7-figure coins were out of vogue, and if you were smart, that's when you bought. Right before this current market rise on such rarities like 1913 nickels and 94 s dimes and $1804. I mean, I know John Albanese at CAC had bought an $1804. He's always sort of the bottom bidder on such coins at auctions. He just puts in a baseline number, and he was
right,
shocked. He called me and said, "I'm shocked that I bought this coin." And then within 2 days he had several offers on the coin. However,
right,
that they took overnight for people to realize how inexpensive the coin had sold, and now I think that coin just sold again for quite a bit more. So
right,
these are very much, everyone is sort of looking at everybody else and what they do, and that's a terrible situation. But in rare coins, it's not always the case. You can have very eccentric buyers who don't care at all about what other people are doing, and you might have someone who says, "I'll buy every $1804. I don't care. I'm worth a few $1 billion." And if I have to buy, five $1804, that's great. I mean, I always wanted them. So,
Right, right.
it's not a lot of money coins are still not a lot of money in a lot of ways, not in this economy.
Uh,
And I think that's
that's
part of it.
I totally agree. I think about that all the time when I read about, the Paul Allen sale. The Microsoft head.
Incredible.
They sold his the first session of his art collection. It was 60 lots, and it sold for $1.6 billion or
Right.
1.5. So I mean, compared to that, it was the first ever sale where more than one lot broke 100 million.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
So
you
I
and I
mean, a
love
coin.
art. We
What's a
love art,
coin?
but we'll never understand those numbers. I mean, why would you pay, $100 million for this? I mean, it's just, is it somewhere just to store money? Is it, and it's been that
Right.
way for a long time. So this is no flash in the pan concept, but,
Of course.
but, um, coins have always felt more tangible to me, and art has always felt like something that should be in a museum. But that's just my personal take on things like
Right.
that. But yeah, there's no way to use the macroeconomy to predict the micro numismatic economy. That doesn't
Right.
mean anything. It doesn't mean it won't go down next year. Well, it doesn't mean it won't explode next year. And anybody who tells you otherwise is not telling you the truth. The same with gold and silver spot pricing. Nobody knows what's going to happen there. Too many factors. But what we can tell you is that Greysheet will be honest about the representation of those numbers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, awesome. I think that's pretty solid for now. We
Yeah,
covered a lot of ground.
yeah. It's only been 3 years since we did this, so let's.
Yeah, yeah, no
Now that we
kidding,
got the
no kidding.
studio back, we can do it again and again. But we have so much to talk about.
We have a ton of things to talk about always.
Mhm.
We appreciate anyone and everyone who checks in. Please don't hesitate to comment or shoot us an email. Our email addresses are pretty widespread or well known. And of course, we really encourage people to constantly check out graysheet.com because there's always stuff, there's always new things. We do a lot of things quietly. Like John, as you mentioned, the Canadian pricing was kind of just done without any really big fanfare, but it's there and it's a huge amount of information that really has never been done before for the US collector. So yeah, so check that out and make sure you read our weekly digest that goes out every Saturday morning.
Yep. And right. On that note, happy holidays to everybody. Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy Thanksgiving, and then come Happy New Year. And then please, if you're going to the fun show in Florida, please come and see us. Patrick and I will be there, and we're also going to be at the Berlin World Money Fair the first week in February. And so we will be, we're going to be having a big old time over there. So please come see us. Send us your questions. We'll address them in the next podcast.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Greysheet would like to thank the entire staff of 2022 who made this one of the best years Greysheet has ever had. This includes our customer service and administrative team, Amber Perez, Colleen Bankovitz, and Willis Chen. We also want to thank production manager Sam Crow for putting out outstanding Greysheet covers every month and making our production a smooth process. Greysheet is very thankful to have Greg Bradley, IT specialist, who manages and has built the backbone of most of our digital online platforms. Where, of course, would we be without the specialties of our Vice President of Data and Content, Patrick Perez, and his hard work pricing our database, managing the big notebook, and giving us such wonderful market insights on numismatics and a multitude of other topics. We want to thank Amanda Blatto, who has come on board as Vice President of CDN Exchange. She is currently working hard to make CDN Exchange the best platform online for dealers and providing exciting new podcasts for numismatists and collectors alike. We want to thank our marketing expert, Jeremy Gottlieb, as he works hand in hand with a name many of you are familiar with, our Vice President of Operations and Advertising, Billy Blattle. Big shout out to John Fagenbaum for organizing and being one of the best presidents for a company there could be. Last but not least, we want to thank you, our viewers, and our subscribers for your patience and support as we make and build Greysheet to fit every dealer's needs. Without you, we wouldn't be where we are today. So thank you. We look forward to seeing everyone at the upcoming Winter Fun 2023. And from the Greysheet team to you, happy holidays.